Welcome, everyone. So, ghost kitchens, dark kitchens, however you want to call them, has obviously been something that was on the edge of what we were paying attention to, and then the pandemic shows up, and now it's integral to what we do. So this session is all about that innovation and where it goes next from here. So with us today we have Vice President of Sales from Virtual Dining Concepts, Kelly Grogan, the Vice President of Business Development from Kitchen United, Jen Henriksen, and the CEO of Franklin Junction, Rishi, Nigam. So let's start. Each of you just give a quick introduction and what your companies do, and then we'll dive right in. So Kelly, let's start with you.
Hi everyone, my name is Kelly Grogan, Virtual Dining Concepts, booth 840 in the back there. We are the leading provider of delivery-only brands in the virtual restaurant space right now, and we're probably most commonly known for Mr. Beast Burger, Tyga Bites, Mariah Carey's cookies, and a few other exciting concepts. So we're really excited to be here today and tell you a little bit more about what we do and some of the opportunity.
Fantastic. Rishi.
I'm with Franklin Junction, and what we do is match restaurants that have excess capacity with brands they can sell for delivery only. So what we created is a host kitchen matchmaking marketplace.
Fantastic. Last but not least, Jen.
Jen Henriksen, business development for Kitchen United. I think I was employee number 10 or 11. Been with the company for about 2.5 years, which doesn't seem like a ton of time, but the industry is kind of like dog years. So we've learned a lot. Our model is completely turnkey, so we are ghost kitchens that are meant to be seen. We determined pretty early on as we started building out the model that consumers find you if you have an online presence. And they come in and they want to be served and they need support and help. So that sort of drives our decisions in expansion and turnkey model. We provide a kitchen, fully equipped. We bring restaurant brands in and they cook food for the off-premise diner.
Perfect. So we're going to dive in with starting on the definitions, because this sort of umbrella term, ghost kitchens, really encompasses a lot of different business models, a lot of different ways of execution, and we specifically invited these three panelists because each of the things that they do is just a little bit different. So, Kelly, if we start with you, the actual real ghost kitchen.
Yeah, I would say, in ghost kitchen and virtual restaurant, virtual brand, they are brands that are operating inside of an existing kitchen space. So if you own a pizza place, this is something where you can operate one of these concepts inside of that location. With the ghost kitchen sort of virtual restaurants and virtual brands, they are not locations where customers will show up to them. So for example, our Mr. Beast Burger locations, nobody is going to be hopping in the car and driving to Mr. Beast Burger for their Friday night dinner. They'll be hopping on those third-party apps to order from those specific brands and those specific locations. So I think the easiest way to sort of define it is that it is not a physical location that somebody will go to, but it's operating inside of an existing restaurant location.
And sort of on that same vein, but a little different, Rishi, the host kitchen.
So our philosophy is that existing restaurants already have capacity to make more food. They've been limited by the sign that they put out front that says, "This is all I can make." But in reality, they could probably make multiple other cuisines and menus out of there. So what we wanted to do was create a platform for these existing restaurants to be able to sell other concepts for delivery only and make incremental revenue without spending any capital expense. And we call that a host kitchen platform. So we dropped a G. So we're not building facilities, we're not operating in ghost kitchens, we're not creating concepts like BDC is. We are simply matching really good brands to where the really good operators are with that excess capacity, which we believe pretty much everybody has unless you have a Chick-fil-A sign out front.
I was about to say, our Italian restaurant that my family had in Chicago for 55 years, sushi wouldn't have exactly landed on the menu, but what you just described makes perfect sense. Jen, Kitchen United was one of the original ghost kitchen brands. You gave a little bit of a teaser in your
I did.
introduction, but let's just dive right into Kitchen United and all of what it has brought into this whole new subset of the restaurant industry.
Well, it's interesting. The term ghost kitchen or dark kitchen, we've never been entirely comfortable with. So we say that we're meant to be seen. What we've found in our environment is that we build not necessarily on Main and Main, but close to it. So there's typically consumer traffic in the area. We do have a storefront. We have a consumer-facing brand called Kitchen United Mix. And we work with virtual restaurants, but we work typically with known restaurant brands, large national chains, regional concepts, multi-facility operators. So we want to be sure that we are meeting the consumer where they are if they want to come in for pickup, and that we're representing those restaurant brands well. The restaurants come in and they do, in our environment, we're structured with a monthly membership fee that sort of covers everything, so it's all in. So we carry the CapEx, we do the build, the restaurant brand puts their cooks in the kitchen, they prepare the food. Our staff, front and back of house, makes sure that those orders get to the right delivery provider, whatever channel that order comes in on, and then we have a tech stack that sort of wraps all of this together and allows consumers to order across all concepts within one facility, on one ticket, for takeout or delivery or pickup.
Perfect. So one of the big things that I think has sort of been on the edge of everyone's minds, but during the pandemic, people started to open their minds to it. They've started to test it out and try these different new ways of thinking about how to use excess capacity. But when we look at the independent restaurant owner, and let's face it, the pandemic hit everybody. It hit everybody hard. Some brands, because they were already doing drive-through, they already were really well set up for delivery, they were able to actually grow. But the independent, even a single unit operator, they were hit the hardest. And so as ghost kitchens, dark kitchens, host kitchens, whatever we end up calling them in this whole new way of partnering is an opportunity for independent restaurant owners. But how do they decide which one's the right model for them? What are the things they should be looking for as they do this? And Rishi, I actually want to start with you because what Franklin Concepts is actually really geared specifically for that model.
Yep. So all of these, in my opinion, are brand expansion strategies first. So whether you're building a brand or you have an existing brand that you're looking to get into new markets, there's different ways to go about doing it. You can rent out facility space and operate it yourself in a true ghost kitchen environment. You could have a managed ghost kitchen like Kitchens United is and license or franchise your brand to them where they'll operate it for you. Or you have the opportunity to work with a Franklin Junction type where we are putting you with operators that have kitchens already. So all of these are just different ways to maybe expand, and they're not competing strategies. There's brands that participate in all of these. They do ghost kitchens, managed ghost kitchens, and a host kitchen model. So understanding what the trade-off is, what the investment is, what the speed of scalability is, what access you have to different markets. Taking all that into account, you can build a cohesive strategy that suits what you're trying to achieve.
Kelly, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah. I think as an independent operator of a restaurant, you are daily looking for how do I get one more order, or how do I get one more customer, or how can I continuously grow my business on a daily basis. And what's great about sort of the virtual restaurant model is that it's an easy way to implement that into your existing restaurant without having to change anything about that brand that you've worked so hard to develop and grow. These virtual brands can operate inside of that kitchen space and operate almost independently of your existing brand, but while using the same sort of operations and the same sort of structure with it. So the risk is much less, but it's an awesome opportunity to help you drive that additional revenue without making any major changes to your existing concept.
Perfect. Jen, I'm going to pivot the question a little bit for you. So, innovation was a huge part of getting through the pandemic. As we look forward, the entire theme of this year's marketplace has been revival. Next year's theme is going to be looking more towards the future and what comes next. So I'm the independent restaurant operator. I have maybe 1, 3, 5 units, but I want to take something that I'm really well known for, and I'll actually take an example of a member of ours in Waco. It's George's Restaurant, and they do these jalapeno chicken poppers that actually became very famous because George W. Bush loved them so much. He would have orders brought to Air Force One anytime he would fly internationally, and he would bring them to whomever he was visiting abroad. So I'm this independent operator who has something like that, and I want to scale it. How do I work with you to do that?
Well,
or what should I look for?
Look, I think the answer is that you may pick what works best for you and your model, but you might work with all of us. Essentially, what this industry does is it allows restaurants a way to scale and grow and reach new markets in a capital light way. So all of these solutions on the stage today, you are either leveraging your existing facilities, which you've already built, you are coming into a site that someone else like us have carried the CapEx for and put together for you. It's a game changer for the franchise model. You can, like, restaurant concepts, restaurant groups can move their brands nationally, internationally, through these channels at greater speed without the big investment.
And that perfectly sets up my question for Rishi, which is, the average independent that's going to be dubious about this entire thing, can we go a little deeper into the mechanics of the financial model itself, and what should they expect or use as a barometer of a good deal versus a bad deal of partnering, as far as how it's going to affect their bottom line?
Did you say the franchise model?
No.
Or just
doing the
just
ghost or
doing the
host
host
kitchen
model?
or taking space away from their already production area, basically working with you.
Yeah, I think that's why it's important to pick, the partner that you believe best understands your operation and your goals. In our model, an average revenue for a concept may be $2,000, and enterprise-wide, an average ticket is $30. So that breaks down to about 70 orders a week or 10 orders a day. I don't know any restaurant operators that would panic if they got 10 more orders a day. So that's what we mean by it's a very low impact integration. It's an incremental sale. Then we evaluate for the restaurants how many concepts they can take on based on that capacity. We have concepts that do, as I mentioned, $2,000 a week, and restaurants can take on 2 to 3 on average. We have concepts that sometimes do $5,000 a week, and you only need 1 concept. So it's a very consultative approach at Franklin Junction. I would expect that some of our other folks in this space probably look at it the same way, and it's probably incumbent on the restaurant owners and operators to make sure that they're getting a plan that they're comfortable with and they feel like they can execute, but still have meaningful profits attached to it.
Kelly, sort of the same question, but getting started and thinking about this, what are my startup costs? What kind of space dedication do I have to have if I want to partner and work with you?
Yeah. With virtual dining concepts, we've got a selection of different menus that you can choose from, and similar to Rishi, it's a consultative approach. It wouldn't make sense to put a sushi virtual brand inside of an Italian restaurant. It just doesn't necessarily work logistically. So it's about reviewing what kind of SKUs do you have in-house already that may be underutilized, or what kind of kitchen equipment could you continue to maximize inside of your space? Do you need something that's going to be using your flat top versus your oven? Or would a refrigeration-only concept work really well in your location? And that's why I think it's most important that you're looking at your existing space and looking at what can you handle and where can you handle it inside of your kitchen. From there, there's 2 different solutions, right? You could very well create your own virtual brand and test it out. I'll tell you, as we all know in the restaurant industry, time is money though. And so that's why there are so many other solutions out there that you can quickly implement to see if it is a fit for your location. And what's great about the virtual restaurant side of things is that it's relatively low risk. You're not blowing out a wall in your kitchen, you're not signing a new lease somewhere, you're not buying a ton of new kitchen equipment. You're using what you already have inside of your space, and seeing how can I get 5 more orders out of this fryer or 5 more orders out of this oven. And that's why a lot of these brands can be easy to implement. The great thing, virtual dining concepts, is we get our partners up and running in less than 30 days. I don't know of many business models out there that you can start generating revenue and receiving orders in less than 30 days, especially in the restaurant space, right? It's something where it's great to get and move that quickly because you're not building a brand new restaurant. So for us, it's you're using the food that you already have in-house. You're bringing in the packaging to be able to execute those orders, and from there you test it out and it fits right in with your existing operations.
I would just add on the financial piece in our model. So along those lines, without the CapEx investment, but where we see our restaurant brands finding that profitability, if you're performing typically 10-15% margins in your brick and mortar, what we're seeing in our sites is 15 to 20% type of margins, and a lot of that is coming from the shared labor across the facility. So because you don't have to staff, you're just staffing the kitchen, you're putting a cook in the kitchen, and we're taking care of that whole operational piece. We're seeing brands, save anywhere 50-60% on their labor line.
Perfect. And actually, you just set up the next question perfectly, Jen, that I'm going to throw to you. So, brand integrity became a huge issue during the early days of the pandemic when all we had were curbside pickup and delivery, and the packaging mattered all of a sudden. It was a steakhouse is not going to send, a porterhouse steak out and risk their brand reputation on that. So a lot of people changed the menus of what they would send out, and it took everybody from saying, okay, carry out and delivery is that nice to have to it's a must have, and we have to do it right. And so with things like this, what makes a brand successful? What makes it all work?
There are a number of elements. So the first thing that pops into mind for me always is digital presence. So you're reaching a consumer that is not necessarily walking by your storefront. So having some digital savvy, following on social media is a big element of that. Good food matters. So food that delivers well, travels well. We keep our delivery zones super tight. It's a 10-minute transport time from our kitchen centers. Part of that is to help counter food degradation over that travel time. And packaging is also important, and I think there are going to be more and more innovations coming around packaging. The cool thing is what we're seeing as dining is coming back, we're not seeing that impact delivery. Delivery is staying high, and so it's no longer an incremental a couple orders a day. It's actually developed into a sustainable long-term real revenue stream and channel.
And Jen and Rishi, for both of you, in the same vein, so I partner and I'm using the excess space and capacity in my kitchen to do one of these brands. Where is the quality control factor there for the brand that I'm doing to know that you guys have that under control and there's no risk on that end of things?
Go ahead. You want to start?
Go for it.
All right. So in our perspective, a brand doesn't have to sell this, and they really shouldn't sell the same menu for delivery that they sell in their restaurant. In a lot of the cases, it's not the same customer. They're not looking for the same thing. They're not looking for that same experience of going to a restaurant. They're looking for convenience and a different variety. So understanding what the menu should be from the brand side, what travels well, what's easy to execute, those things can help prevent a lot of issues on the front side of it. 18 months ago, Michelin star chefs were so full of themselves they wouldn't put a salt shaker on the table, and now they're all selling food for delivery. But they're not selling the same stuff, and they're doing it in a different way that's thoughtful to their brand, but still giving you the access and still getting you what you want. And I think it's the same goes for anybody all the way down to the big QSR chains that we know. You have to think about the customer first and what their need state is, what are they looking to fulfill through that delivery. On the other side, if you're an operator and the person that we on our platform are relying to execute these brands, we don't have a sign-up process. You can't just sign up to be on Franklin Junction. There's a qualification criteria that you have to meet as an operator to show why we should license or trust you with these really, really great brands that we have. So I think we have the industry best, average reviews, average tickets, lowest returns, and those are the things that allow us to pair with the really good notable brands because they know that their brand is trusted through us with vetted operators who are going to take care of it and add to that brand value, not diminish it.
Yeah. For us, it's something, it starts with having these great operators. Somebody that's looking to grow their business and maximize their kitchen space, that's where it begins. Somebody that's dedicated to growing their business, and that's what a qualification we use as being a good partner for us. The great thing about partnering with an organization that has sort of these established brands is that we've gone through and we've done the testing. We've done the work in researching the recipes, speaking to the third-party platforms to understand what's going to work and what's in high demand. We've done the research on the packaging, what is going to travel well and what's going to deliver that guest experience when it gets into their hands, whether it's 10 minutes after it leaves the restaurant or 30 minutes after the restaurant. What is that experience when the customer gets their hands on it? And that's something that we've gone through and have fully vetted on behalf of our restaurant partners. So they know when they're bringing this concept in, they don't have to worry about changing up their recipes and the ingredients that are in there. They're receiving sort of this out-of-the-box turnkey solution that they can get up and running, that the testing has already been done to solidify things such as the packaging, the recipes, the taste when it gets to that customer.
Okay. So the number one concern for operators, or at least for 48% listed as the number one concern just prior to the pandemic, was workforce. The NRA just did the same survey again for us a couple months ago. That number has jumped to 78%, but not surprising, workforce is back to being their number one concern. And I think that number is probably a little bit of a soft number because there's not a single operator I've spoken to that hasn't talked about the impact of the workforce shortage that we're experiencing, or operators that are back on the floor sorting silverware, serving, hosting, valeting cars. I've heard all of them in one point or another talk about being back, literally arms deep in it. The workforce shortage, how has it impacted what all three of your companies do and how you work with the restaurants? And Jen, why don't we start with you?
Look, we're experiencing the same labor issues and challenges that all of you are. There's just no way around it. So there's a lot of occasional issues with chefs not showing up, and how do we manage that on our platform and manage those orders. There are a lot of extra shifts and extra hours by a lot of people just to kind of keep things running. I think it's a time that we're going to get through, clearly, we always do. We're a very resilient nation. I do think that consumers, what we're seeing, consumers know this. They're probably struggling in their own businesses and other sectors. It doesn't even have to be restaurant. This translates to retail and across the board. So I think consumers in our experience have also been a bit understanding and forgiving, just knowing that we've got potentially lots of new staff, inexperienced staff, and changing staff.
And Rishi, you mentioned how your partnership model, you can sometimes have just one brand, you can have 3 brands, 5 brands, just depending on the capacity. So with the same issues of workforce, how is that impacting just the ability to produce the volume?
As I mentioned, doing an average brand for us is 10 orders a day. And then we also start with the brand and narrowing down the menu. So you're looking at doing the 5 greatest hits from a brand menu. It's not a huge impact. That's a typical limited time offering that restaurants and franchises roll out all the time, and our staff absorbs it. It's really not, it's a non-issue. How many people in here are operators or ever have been? Anybody old enough to remember when labor wasn't an issue in our industry? It's always been an issue. We always blame some other reason why labor is an issue in our industry. So labor is always an issue, but I think indirectly, the employees get blamed, and we've all been employees. Everybody that's an operator, I know all of us on stage, have started in hourly positions. I was a line cook at a French restaurant as a teenager. I mean, it's always blame the employee for wages, blame the employee for shortages. It's not the employee's fault. It's the owners and operators who have to find ways to make revenue and pay for whatever the prevailing wages are, and find a way to make your restaurant more efficient. And that's never really been available before. Maybe technology wasn't there, delivery wasn't available, platforms like ours weren't available. It wasn't possible before. But now that there are opportunities, it's incumbent on restaurant owners and operators and even franchisors to find a way to make more money for their restaurants so we can afford to pay employees what they need to be getting paid. But I'm from Georgia. We've been pretty fortunate. People from Texas, I think, have gotten by okay the past year. I feel bad for some of our partners that are in some of these states that really have a manufactured crisis. I hope they can get past it, but labor's always going to be an issue here. We have to be ingenious to come up with ways to generate more revenue so we can take care of our employees, because when you operate in a restaurant, you know better than anybody else how hard your employees are working for you, who shows up, and you want to take care of them, but sometimes the economics don't allow it. Now there's an opportunity to do that.
Well, and I would just tag on to that yes, labor is an issue, but to Rishi's point, it's not slowing growth, at least in this sector, right? So going into COVID, we were seeing a 20% compound annual growth rate in delivery, and now it's closer to 25. And that's not going away. Millennials and younger generations have grown up with these apps and platforms, and they're using those, and COVID actually expanded that market to expose these technologies to additional generations and demographics. So it's not slowing down. Compounded, that's huge.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And right at the beginning of the pandemic, when the realization hit everybody that we're 51% of the food dollar, and all of a sudden the supply chain's not there, and it's completely separate from grocery stores. And those same demographics you mentioned, you go to a grocery store and they're going to go, unless it goes in a microwave, what do I do with this stuff? So at the end of the day, they're looking for a restaurant to go to or be brought to them. Which brings us to third-party delivery. So as they've been working with the various different providers, independent brands have had to really work to make themselves be seen. Because obviously all of the third-party delivery companies have been around for a while, and sort of the given national chains and certain local multi-unit operators were using them, but the independents that hadn't really dived into it, that was also a big brand challenge. So Kelly, with the virtual concepts where you're not clicking with, oh, I drove past that the other day, that sounds good for dinner tonight, I'm going to order that. How do you get the virtual brands really to grow with their presence and then be recognized when we're dealing with the third-party apps?
With virtual dining concepts, with our concepts, because they are these national brands with multiple locations across the United States, it gives us a higher buying power when we're on those third-party platforms to make sure that we're in the carousels and we're at top of the fold when you're scrolling through those apps. But I think the big thing is there's a huge marketing arm there that allows us to really build out those profiles, make them attractive. We've done a ton of research as to what these consumers are looking for and what converts on those third-party platforms. And consequently, we've built our profiles on there to be attractive to those customers. So using the right photos, using the right colors, and really building them out. As an operator, it takes so much time to write those descriptions, to take those beautiful looking photos, to come up with the branding behind it. With a turnkey solution that you can just operate inside of your existing space, we've done all that to ensure that it is populating on those third parties to get you those conversions and get you those orders. Because we know statistically that's what performs well on those platforms.
Perfect. And we're going to open the floor for Q&A in just a minute, but I'm going to ask one last question of the panel first, and that is, with all of what your companies are doing, each of you, and yesterday the word disruptor was thrown around a lot with the various things that have been introduced during the pandemic and the innovations, but at the end of the day, that's what they are. They're innovations, it's evolution of our industry as a whole, but the franchise model has pretty well been locked in for a while. And so with what the three of you are doing, how do you see it changing, or how do you want it to change? Jen, why don't we start with you?
I think the market's going to dictate that, but all of these platforms are a complete game changer for the franchise model. So the economics in our environments, for example, they work whether you're a franchisee or you are a corporate-owned brand and kitchen. So it allows, like I was saying earlier, these broader restaurant groups to expand more rapidly. They don't have to carry the CapEx. We're doing all of that. and everything is, the operation is in place for you, ready to go.
Rishi?
Are there any, more polling, are there any franchisors in here? Any brands? All right, thank goodness. Are there any franchisees in here? All right, lots of you. So how many times have you been told you have to take this package of restaurants, one's gonna do really good, 4 are gonna suck, but don't worry, this one good one's gonna cover those other 4. And I think the problem with that is that that's not always the case. And we don't want that, because we spent the same amount of money building those other restaurants too. We want to show a return on those too. And it has grown to a point where franchisors are making the same amount of money, there's no risk involved, and you're left holding the bag. And franchisees are not big business just because they're flying a big business flag. They are family businesses, they're small businesses, they're independent business operators, and they deserve a chance at profiting and making back that investment. And I think that's where the disruption with our model is coming, is because there is no franchisor that can say what we are doing is affecting the in-house experience of the brand that they have. You're still taking care of the dining room, you're still taking care of the brand's product, but what we're doing is allowing you and giving you the freedom to make a profit on all of those locations that aren't doing so well. So we've been fortunate to work with some really good brands, including franchisors, who have allowed some of their large franchisees to say, yes, you can partner with Franklin Junction and execute these other concepts. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that. I think that that's going to get challenged quite a bit, this franchise model. And I think the smart franchisors, the smart brands are going to say, I'd rather keep that business flying my flag than shut down and have these buildings back in my hands and have to find a way to reallocate that inventory. So the pressure's coming, and if you're a franchisee, you should feel empowered to put that pressure back on your brand partners.
Fair enough. Jen?
I couldn't agree more on that. That's what's most exciting about all of this. The days of having to have $1 million to be able to open up a restaurant, or $100,000 to buy into a franchise model. Everybody sitting up here can offer a solution at a fraction of that to allow you to grow your brand and compete with those other large brands, or take a piece of that existing national concept and bring it inside of your location to help make you be more profitable. There's so many other options out there, so I do think from a disruption standpoint, it's just getting started, and the power is going to shift to the restaurant owners and operators like it never has before.
All right, so we're going to open up for Q&A. I'm going to have Jenny grab the mic here, and anybody who has a question, just raise your hand and she'll come on over.
Hey, how are you? My name's Allie. I have a restaurant in Houston, and quick question, what's your experience with health departments? Because technically, in Houston at least, you're not supposed to cook for 2 different brands out of the same equipment. So you mentioned, you kind of alluded to doing that, so I'm just curious what your experience is.
Absolutely. And it is something, just like many of the industries, when new technology and new things start happening, many of those other organizations that haven't necessarily had to innovate that much in the past few years are still figuring out how to handle that. We have tons of restaurants in the Houston market that are currently executing our brands, and sometimes it's an education piece in working with those health departments to walk them through the process, and so that they know while it's a different brand, you're using ingredients that are currently inside of your restaurant, and it's operating the same way that your existing concept is, and you are still the operator of it, right? You're still the one that's responsible for cooking the food, managing the temperatures, making sure it's going out the door correctly. And once they sort of get over that hump of it, they tend to understand, and they're very flexible with it.
I think you got a great partner in these guys that can maybe help take that up with you, with the Houston.
He set up what I was going to wrap up that question with, but yeah, the one other amazing thing that came out of the last 15 months was how much closer we are as an association with the, not just TFER, but the health departments across the entire state. I mean, it's not just 254 county whack-a-mole, it's in some cases in every single municipality that they're tweaking how they do things. And yet, we had to work with them on the reopening protocols, make sure that they understood them. And so our 4 executive directors out of our regional offices have very close relationships with these directors of health departments, et cetera, and it really transformed how they look at us and all of our members, and vice versa. And I think keeping that relationship moving forward is definitely a priority for us. And Kelly said it right. It's about educating them to how this works and how things need to be executed. And ultimately, if need be, next legislative session we'll write something up for a bill and get it passed that is benefits this. That's how we do what we do. Jen?
What we've found on the health department side is that it just requires some conversations. Because we're doing the building, typically we're managing that for you. The restaurant still has their own independent health permit to operate inside of one of our kitchens, because that kitchen's dedicated space for the restaurant brand. We just went through this in Los Angeles market, and it extended the process a little bit. But we find in general the health departments across the country are very willing to work with you, and they want to, especially in light of the pandemic, I think, they're looking for ways to find solutions and to keep business going and to support the economy. So just because the code in a box checking, it gets a bit tricky, to Kelly's point of, we don't have a code for that. I mean, when we first started, our feedback in different municipalities was, wait a minute, you're putting 12 restaurants inside that building? Well, then you need to have 5,000 parking spots. And it's like, but that's not what we're doing. So there is an education process. Unfortunately, this is a trend that's been happening for a few years now. So I think most markets are familiar, definitely, with this sort of concept and idea and more open to it.
Coming off of that question, though, because I think this is one thing that from a liability standpoint would certainly come up in any operator's mind that's going to partner with you. So Rishi, I'm going to toss this one to you. When that something goes wrong and there's either a fine or a potential license infraction, where does that liability chain, how does that work with the model that you have with your partners?
Yeah, in our model, the operator is still responsible for that. If you make pasta at your Italian restaurant for a living, and I tell you to cook a burger and you decide to serve a raw burger, I don't think that's anybody else's fault but the operator. So in our model, the license holder, whether it's public health or fire marshal or whatever, you're holding that license. The operator is still responsible for that, which is why it's paramount importance that we pick good operators that are qualified to do this well. If you don't do a good job with your own food, you don't have good health ratings in your own restaurant, we're probably not going to give you somebody else's brand. And so yeah, that's for Franklin Junction at least.
Fair enough. Kelly, did you want to add anything to that?
I can echo the same thing. It all comes down to the operations. And if you wouldn't serve a raw burger on your menu, we hope that you wouldn't serve it on a virtual menu either. So.
Fair enough. Any other questions? Yes.
Hi, my name's Comfort, and I'm with the Caribbean House. I have a question with regards to marketing. So, virtual restaurants, the bigger chains dominate, bigger budgets, already have a trusted brand, but you've got your smaller mom and pops that are seeking to grow, and some of the platforms, it's a little more challenging to get to the first page. Realistically, not everyone is going to be on the first page. So what recommendations and advice do you have for the smaller local businesses that are looking to grow their business? What kind of marketing do you find, based on your research, that it's effective for those smaller restaurants that are going virtual?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk to that one a little bit. So on the marketing side, I can give you an example maybe of what one of our brands does. They do have they had a couple of locations when they started with us. They're based in Pasadena, California. It's Doghouse. Doghouse was originally hot dogs, fries, that kind of thing, small business. They launched a bunch of virtual concepts out of our facility. And one of the ways that they have gotten reach and traction with those virtual brands is by promoting them to their Doghouse order customers. So they're basically saying, okay, you're coming to me for Doghouse, you know me, and then when they package the food, they're putting a list, like a recall card in the packaging bag that says, here are the other concepts that we do. So you can also get burgers, and you can get salads, you know, whatever you're looking for. So that's one way to combat. Another way is to look at solutions like this and figure out how you can maybe leverage a partner's marketing. So something that we do, we spend money on digital, we promote our kitchen centers, we promote the brands within our kitchen centers, right? So there's support there. And then we also work with communities around our kitchen centers to drive catering and other types of orders. So even if you're independent, but you're near a college campus, or you're near a medical center, or a high-rise office tower, like there may be personal ways that you can connect with building management and sort of drive some more higher AUVs that way. A couple of ideas.
Perfect. Anyone else? All right, then I've got a couple more questions for you guys. First of all, the one area that we didn't touch on, but I think is an opportunity, and I'd be interested to get each of your thoughts on this, is we'll still use the term ghost kitchens until we come up with a better one for the umbrella of everything. But food deserts. How can the ghost kitchen concept address that? And as you're looking, you know, within that same vein, with who you partner, is this something where, you know, we have amazing kids in Pro Start that are at the high school level learning to do things? So is it, you know, in the summertime when school's out and that cafeteria kitchen is empty, is that a possible, you know, place where things can be done? Or even, you know, in prisons where it gives the incarcerated the skills to know how to be in our industry when they come out of this. So I think there's some kind of under the theme of, you know, social impact. Where does the ghost kitchen model take us next? Kelly, you want to start?
What's great about it is that in some of those sort of more rural areas that are only used to seeing the McDonald's, the Chili's, the, you know, very sort of regional chains in that area, this allows a mom and pop to sort of expand and bring a new concept into that area without opening up another space. But when we look at the virtual brand side of things, it allows the schools, the prisons, the institutions of the world, hotels, anybody who has sort of, they've made this investment in kitchen equipment and it's not going at full capacity 24 hours a day, these virtual brands allow them to take advantage of that equipment and make it worthwhile and execute something inside of there. So I do see that continuing to expand as we continue to grow with this and seeing those options become more sort of regionally based.
Jen?
Ultimately, I would say absolutely all of the facilities you mentioned are potential, you know, locations to launch something like this. We look at, you do need to have a certain level of population density around your restaurant, of course, because there are economics. I mean, you're not doing this for fun or free, although it is fun. Right? So you do need some sort of critical mass and sort of engaged audience around you. But any facility where there's existing infrastructure, that makes sense. And really it's relative to your investment. So maybe there isn't like high revenue opportunity in the immediate area, but maybe it doesn't cost you anything to retrofit an existing space like a school cafeteria. So if you have no cost invested, then maybe the economics make more sense. So it's just, we're exploring all kinds of different permutations of the model. We started with these big traditional kitchen centers in urban areas. This year we've opened 2 more food hall type models. We've got Westfield and San Jose. We're just opening, we're about half open in Chicago West Loop, a former Wells Market. And some exciting announcements coming up over the next few months. So anybody that wants to talk about partnering on that front and on the real estate front, come see me after the show.
Great. Rishi, anything you want to add?
No, I mean, that was our whole impetus for starting the Host Kitchen platform. Is pre-COVID, there was over 700,000 restaurants in this country. You add in hotels and grocery stores and cafes and all these schools and things. You had over 1 million kitchens in this country. We had the highest ratio of kitchens per capita behind Japan in the whole world. So, I mean, we didn't need any more kitchens. We don't need any more kitchens now. We just got to find a more effective way to use them. So I agree. We already have schools, stadiums, hotels, convention centers, in addition to our restaurant partners. And Franklin Junction, about 2/3 or more of our partners are in suburbs or even like tier 3 in rural areas. I like it. I'm challenged by it because there's staffing issues in restaurants. The delivery companies have those staffing issues out there too. It's very easy for us to get a concept going and get the food there, but there's no drivers out there. So if you've ever lived in any of those areas, I live 30 miles outside the city. We don't have drivers, you know, they just don't exist. So I think that we're probably a little ahead of the curve in terms of getting these places staged up to do it, but we're waiting on the rest of the ecosystem to catch up, getting the supplier trucks out there, getting the delivery companies out there, even just getting people educated on online delivery being available and what that is and how to order it. I mean, I was one of those people that before I got into this business, like on the tech side, that I wasn't downloading a delivery company app. I was like, I'm not downloading that. Like, I don't know what that is. You get it. So, but I have, because, you know, you see how convenient it is and how nice it is to be able to order stuff.
So last question, and Anna made sure that I was going to ask this question because she's dying to know the answer. Your ideal pick for the next celebrity face of a ghost kitchen concept, and what will they be promoting for you? Start with Rishi.
Oh, geez. Okay.
Of course, he's starting with you.
I
He
know.
had that face. He had that face going. I got time to think about this. So yeah, of course I'll go with
thought
him.
it would be. Well, as I made clear earlier, I'm from Georgia. I would love to partner with Herschel Walker. I grew up with Herschel Walker being a hero at home, and I would love to do some sort of spin on Georgia food, but he's obviously a health freak and a freak of nature, and I would love to do some sort of healthy, like performance-driven cuisine with a Georgia tilt to it with Herschel Walker. So anybody knows Herschel, give him my number, please.
Fair enough. Jen?
Like a future concept. We've got Trejo's Tacos in a few of our kitchen centers, and Danny Trejo is, you know, this ominous bad guy on the silver screen who is actually one of the nicest people on the planet. And here he is, you know, fulfilling his mother's dream of opening a restaurant for the family. So that's a really warm and fuzzy one for us that we love. And of course, Mexican cuisine travels well, delivers well, everybody loves it. One of my colleagues, I was asking them this question, and they want to mash Beyonce up with somebody because she's Beyonce. Hello. So I'm not sure what that might be. We were talking before the panel about maybe it's a plant-based because she does some plant-based stuff, and then Rishi was saying, well, I don't know how that's going to fly in Texas. so I don't know what we would do with Beyonce, but
Yeah,
that'd be fun
we
to
wouldn't
figure
tell
out.
the beef council about that.
We won't.
Kelly?
I would say I've got a good backing on this just because our focus are celebrity concepts. So the one that we're most excited to launch here on Labor Day weekend is going to be Barstool Bites in partnership with Barstool Sports as well as NASCAR Refuel. So those are some really exciting names. And so I think in going with that trend, what I would love to see, given that I just moved from Boston down to Orlando, is going to have to be a Tom Brady concept. Might do pretty well.
But what would he be selling?
It's going to be a very green menu with coconut oil, so but everybody's going to want to try it. So, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. His face is on it. You're all buying it. We know that.
You got to answer this question too.
You know what? Fair enough. I got to go back to my roots. So if I was going to do anything, it would be some spin of an Italian dish from our restaurant. And I want Sophia Loren back here doing it with us. Because she was just one of the top stars outside of what she does. Her work in Italy around sustainability and farm to table and her love for our industry and what we do, that would be a lot of fun.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
That's a good one. Great.
Rishi, Jen, Kelly, thank you, all three of you, so much for being here. Thank you to all of you for being in on our session. Come back in 10 minutes We'll have our second keynote on private equity, and that's going to be hosted by our president and CEO, Emily Williams-Knight. And thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Paul.